Republicans teamed up with all Democrats to sink that rule. It was the first one under Johnson, and typically hardliners have weaponized the rule and voted against it to stick it to leadership.
Sure.
But this time, actually, a lot more hardliners were on leadership's side with proxy voting, and they threatened to hold up floor proceedings if they didn't kill the proxy voting. But then Luna and her supporters have said, well, we're going to hold up floor proceedings if you don't let my bill come to the floor. So it's definitely putting Johnson in a weird, tight spot, and he basically just said, all right, everyone go home and we'll bring this back up next week. But he's already said that they're moving forward with trying to kill it again. So I'm not really sure where they go from here. It kind of seems like everyone's at a standstill, so it's really just who blinks first.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook. We talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle, and I'm joined today by Congressional reporter Rachel Schilke. Rachel, there was this big brouhaha over proxy voting in the House. Walk us through what that is and why it was such a big deal.
Yeah, definitely a dramatic, short week in the House. So proxy voting is when a member of Congress can designate another member to vote on their behalf. It was a pandemic-era measure that was used quite frequently by Democrats and Republicans. It was phased out under McCarthy. And so now Paulina Luna and Brittany Peterson on the Democratic side and the Republican side are deciding that they want to make proxy voting for new mothers and new dads. And so that would allow the new parent to have 12 weeks of maternity or paternity leave in order to be with their child before they have to come back. And this has been something that Republican leadership has been very adamantly against, because Speaker Mike Johnson says that it is unconstitutional and it can open a Pandora's box to other types of proxy voting. And to that argument, Luna and Peterson have said that it is not going to do that, that the bill is very specific. It will just be for new parents. It is a specific amount of time. And so that kind of caused an uproar in the House this week when 9 Republicans helped sink a rule vote to basically, that rule was going to kill her bill to get new parent proxy voting.
And so that set back what House Republicans were planning to do with the rest of the week, didn't it?
Yes, so there was the SAVE Act, which, if people recall, that was something that passed under the House last year, but obviously with a Democratic Senate and a Democratic president, that was not going anywhere, so now it has more legs to become law. And then the No Rogue Rulings Act, which is about federal judges and nationwide injunctions, that's kind of been a hot topic as well. So those were going to be voted on this week. But then after the rule vote, they had those 2 bills and a couple others, and the little language that tucked in to kill her new parent proxy voting bill, Republicans teamed up with all Democrats to sink that rule. It was the first one under Johnson, and typically hardliners have weaponized the rule and voted against it to stick it to leadership.
Sure.
But this time, actually, a lot more hardliners were on leadership's side with proxy voting, and they threatened to hold up floor proceedings if they didn't kill the proxy voting. But then Luna and her supporters have said, well, we're going to hold up floor proceedings if you don't let my bill come to the floor. So it's definitely putting Johnson in a weird, tight spot, and he basically just said, all right, everyone go home and we'll bring this back up next week. But he's already said that they're moving forward with trying to kill it again. So I'm not really sure where they go from here. It kind of seems like everyone's at a standstill, so it's really just who blinks first.
So they have what's called a discharge petition to try to force their measure to the floor on proxy voting. So would that maybe be the next way forward, or is it still really unclear?
So it's very unclear, because right now that was the method that Luna was bringing up her bill. It was a discharge petition. She got 218 signatures. Democrats and Republicans signed onto it. And so that allowed her to force the bill to the floor. It basically forces leadership to bring a bill that maybe they don't want to onto the floor. And so she went through all the appropriate channels, and she's argued this both to Johnson and to reporters. And so what happens now is she noticed her bill on Tuesday, and so that lets leadership know, hey, you have 2 days to bring this to the floor for a vote. It's just under House rules, that's how it works. And so because they took this leave of absence this week, they have to bring it up next Tuesday on the floor. But again, if they do that, it's unclear whether they're going to tuck it into a rule, and then if the rule sinks from hardliners because they don't like the bill, but if the bill's not in there, then Luna and her supporters will sink the rule. So really it's unclear how they move forward from here. And I think Luna has been very clear that she thinks that the SAVE Act and the No Rogue Rulings rule should be on its own and let her bill come to the floor in appropriate ways.
So there have obviously been a lot of divisions with this narrow House Republican majority, but the whole majority is going to be on the ballot next year in the 2026 midterm elections. You're going to have some Democrats trying to knock off Republicans, Republicans trying to knock off Democrats. You've written a story recently about a Democratic-held House seat in Ohio where Republicans are viewing that as potentially a pickup opportunity. What did you learn?
So the Republican challenger, Kevin Collin, is back for round 2. He is challenging Amelia Sykes again in her seat, and she won that seat pretty handily.
So this would be a rematch.
This would be a rematch. It would be, so she won it pretty handily in the 2024 election by a few percentage points, but a significant amount. And this year, or in the next cycle, I should say, it might be easier for Republicans to pick up this seat because Ohio is going to go through its redistricting process. And in doing so, you have a Republican legislator. It's likely that her seat and Marcy Kaptur's seat are going to be kind of the ones on the chopping block. And so Kevin may have another chance to become a House member. And I'm sure that he's going to have the GOP support behind it, especially since hers will be one of the most competitive.
Kevin can't wait. Thank you, Rachel. You can read Rachel and the rest of our political team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.